great story about...
Really is.
And
Nick
strangely
Nolte
enough,
terrific.
it's very timely when you look at what's gone on
Yes.
in this city in the last few years. I mean, it's very timely. Gotti had no spiritual guidance. He had no moral guidance. He had no guidance but other street people. And I think that very much led to his mantra of how to survive for himself. And I think it very much is evident in the way he behaved all his life.
Tell you this, I've seen every one of the great mob movies, from The Godfather to Goodfellas, Donnie Brasco, and they're all great. I mean, no doubt about it. But I will tell you, in the Gotti movie, I can see what you're talking about with the team, because the chemistry between you and the other characters was amazing. When you're in a room with Anthony Quinn, I felt like I was there, and I didn't want to be in trouble. You know, the way Anthony Quinn was talking, you know, the way he said, you know, I'd be here today with these 2 zips, and you would go. Yeah. It was chilling. And just the look on your face, and every single scene that you were all in was so real. Yeah. I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, but take it from me, Armand. It was so real.
Thank you.
That movie was captivating in every
way. You know,
way.
we shot that in Toronto. I rented a house, and I said to everybody, you're at my house, and on Sunday, we started cooking at like 11 a.m. Mm-hmm. I said, we're going to cook, eat, and rehearse until we drop here tonight. And every week I would put the whole company together and we just rehearse, because I knew it was really a relationship piece. It was an ensemble piece. It wasn't about any one character. It was about all of them being vulnerable to each other. And I mean, you know, I kept thinking the way Shagan carefully constructed that character. And you probably know more than anyone, and probably know a lot of guys who were in the same situation. But Gotti, at that point in his life, was literally putting out fires all day long. Yeah. I mean, he's putting out one fire after another, because nobody... He's a fascinating character, you know, because I often thought, and I don't know this for a fact, but I often thought he very much was of the ethos of somebody like a Carlo Gambino. By the rules. Mm-hmm. You had to go by the book and the rules. Mm-hmm. Of what the Cosa Nostra demanded. But he didn't grow up in that world. It was no longer that world. Right. And I think that he was very divided as a man, because everyone around him had already bought into the drug line, you know, the heroin pipeline, whatever the case may be. And he's trying to hold on to the rules. But I don't know how much involved he was in the pipeline himself. But I'm saying it's a very interesting character, because in a way, he's living with this mantra in his head that he wants people to abide by, but it's a fiasco. Yeah. Nobody's paying attention. So, I mean, it must have been a very lonely, scary journey, as I would imagine the life of any mob person. It's a very, very... You know, the one thing that I was asked to speak today to some very, very young people on a podcast, and with a young rapper, about how to make the audience. The size of his audience is just gargantuan, you know. And the one thing I could say that I really had to make very clear is that I performed in roles where I played a lot of diabolical characters, right? You have to understand, if you watch the film and you pay attention to the script and the story, the character ends up in monumental tragedy. And everyone in his life ends up in the same tragedy. And the point is that, you know, I know that film has a tremendous effect on people. But it's very important they pay attention to the fact there is a moral to these stories. It's not like we're out there saying, do this.
Right.
You know, shoot Fabolay for Booch today, boom. It's not, you know, it's not like we live that life.
Yeah.
We're trying to communicate something, that this way of life, and you, what I really appreciate what you've done is you've cut right through the fourth wall with your life, and shown your heart and soul and said, people, wake up. You've said that. That is your mantra, wake up. So important today. Huge message. And I feel that in the film industry, you know, I wish there were more, in a way, opening up of many characters that play diabolical characters. Understand, we're telling a morality tale. You know, in the theater we have morality plays. All of Shakespeare is morality plays. But the point is, I think there's a lot of influence that's unnecessary. A lot of misinterpreted influence. But if you study these films, I hope that God knows that we're trying to convey that these people who delve into these lives and want to, you know, the attractive. You always see depictions of mob guys laughing around the table. Everybody's having a great time, you know, and then something horrible happens. They go back to laughing about it, you know.
Right.
That's, you know, it's not true.
That's right.
It's all nonsense. But my point is that I hope that young people garner from this that this is, you know, it is no way of life. And I really appreciate what you've done because, in a sense, you really are a very powerful message that you're delivering to people, and a very important one. Because this society, I honestly think that the fascination with the mob goes way back in America for a long time. It goes back to Prohibition, for God's sake. But the point is that the fascination, in a way, is that I think what happened after the Vietnam War when The Godfather was released. In a strange way, The Godfather is a mirror of a lot of the corruption that went on in America.
Yeah,
and people
I
are
agree
watching
with
the
that.
film, and believe it or not, they're watching the metaphor of their own lives and what happened around them. And in the back of, they don't realize it, but in the back of their head, they're seeing this corruption of these people that are into murder, extortion, gambling, whatever they're into, and they're trying to hold on to their family American values. Well, it's incredible hypocrisy. I mean, but the point is that, to me, that film, for the first time in the history of America, my generation had woken up to it. And I think that film is an incredible metaphor. And I don't think that Coppola or Mario Puzo did that intentionally. Right. But it's very interesting that it was released right at a time when the amount of corruption that existed in the 60s is just spellbinding.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, I could tell you, Armand, when that movie came out, guys on the street started to carry themselves differently. It brought an integrity to the life that maybe people didn't realize before that. And they started carrying themselves differently, walking differently, dressing differently, all because of that film. It's amazing how a film can have such an impact on society, and, you know, even on a certain sector of society, like in our lives. It's amazing.
And you know, this company I came here with, Virtual Cons, very interesting, you know. They called me 2 years ago. I didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
They said, you don't know the fascination the global audience now has with mob genre films.
Yeah.
And like I say, I really think mob genres replaced the American Western. For real.
I agree with that.
There are morality plays about corruption that exists in our lives. We watch it on the news every night, and we say, well, who's the mafia here? You know, which mafia is worse than the other? My point is, I didn't realize until I came now, I cannot believe the fascination with that genre is. I saw it here, thousands of people that showed up, and just, it was amazing.
I know, it really is. You know, I've traveled all around the world, and I'm in places like Australia and Singapore, and you say, there's not much of a mob presence here. They're so knowledgeable. They know everything. I get asked questions in Singapore, where was Jimmy Hoffa buried? Yeah, I'm saying, you know, all about Poli Castellano, of course, Gotti, everybody asks about him. How do they know this? Yeah. Movies, media, you know, this is it.
Absolutely fascinating.
It's all around the world. It's unbelievable.
It's all a metaphor for corruption that exists within other systems.
Yeah. I
mean, I worked in countries that some people should never dare to go to, but I'm saying, my God, the corruption that exists in the world. You know. I always say this is the greatest country on earth, and we have unquestionably a flawed justice system. It's the greatest justice system on earth, for real. People don't realize it. There is no place on earth better than where we are right now. There really isn't.
Yeah, Ahmad, I agree with you. I have a little bit of a different perspective. I'm writing a book right now. It's called A Mafia Democracy. And the reason I'm writing that, I love this country. I really do. I mean, I'm born and raised. I love the country. There are flaws in the system, obviously. I have no complaints. I was a criminal at one time. I am very blessed to be here right now, and I really mean that. But I'm watching the way our government is operating, and it scares me because they're now operating under a Machiavellian ideology that I recognized on the street. This was the part of the life that I led, and I'm seeing it in our government now. And, people tell me all the time in messages, Michael, the mob should be running the country. I said, no, the mob should not be running the country. The government should be running the country the right way. Right. But I'm seeing so many similarities, and I'm seeing hypocrisy that scares me. Yeah. Not for me. I mean, I'm 70 years old. I live my life, but I have kids and grandchildren, and I want this country to be the same country I grew up in.
Absolutely.
And it really concerns me. I mean it. And I hope, the reason I wrote the book was really to enlighten people that we have to hold our government officials accountable. Yeah. That's it. For me in life, everything's about accountability. Who you're accountable to is the way you're going to direct your path in life. That's it. Yeah.
There's so much goodness in this country that I think
there is.
Have been taken advantage of. Even being at this convention, the goodness in people, the genuine... Nobody's life is a cakewalk right now. There's so much human suffering and pain in the world that it's inescapable. It touches all of us, and it's touched all of our lives. But my point is, you're just reminded at a convention like this of the sheer goodness and gentleness of people. You know what I mean? And I don't like to see sometimes what's blown up in the media as this. I don't know. They've literally polarized this country in a way that's not the world I grew up in. Right. It's not the leadership and tutorship that I grew up in, and they're not the values that I grew up in. And the people I've known in my lifetime from every walk of life, from every ethnicity, from every background, were in my life. They are the fabric of my life. Mm-hmm. And I feel that's been, in a way, blurred. Yeah. I feel as if you put something over the lens, and I'm no longer seeing what I grew up with. People that really worked and helped and motivated each other and were brothers and sisters of every persuasion with each other. I'm not seeing that.
Well, I'm going to tell you, there's a big flaw in humanity. In Cosa Nostra, we had a lot of, I think, good principles. I really mean that. But they were corrupted by money and power. Money and power, tremendous aphrodisiacs to people, and they're highly corruptive. Yeah. And I'm seeing that happen in our government, and that's what concerns me, because the government should be working for the benefit of the people. And I tell people all the time, look, when we were on the street, we weren't working for the benefit of people all the time. We took care of our neighborhoods. We made sure there was no crime in our neighborhoods. We watched out for our families and the people we were concerned with, but everybody else was kind of whatever we had to do. And the government should not act like that, they shouldn't act like that. And I'm just feeling there's a whole different thing, and it's all corruption, money and power.
Very dangerous.
And it's dangerous.
Distortions in the media are truly tragic.
Yes.
And very tragic consequences.
Absolutely, and especially in a free country. I mean, you depend upon an unbiased media to report the news.
I've worked in almost every country on earth, and I've lived in most of them for a long time. And if people really understood what a blessing it is to be on this soil, they might change their attitude. Yeah. But it's everyone's life experience. But you have only to live in under other philosophies and democracies, so-called democracies. They're a joke. They're an absolute joke.
Well, let me tell you this. There was an announcement made that I'm excited about. As a matter of fact, Angel Gotti had called me the day before I came here, and she said there's going to be a special announcement at Mob Movie Con. I can't tell you what it is. I had a feeling, but there's going to be a Gotti too.
That's what they tell me. I don't know.
What do you think?
I have to look at it very rationally. First of all, and let this be the final statement, I would never do anything that would, in any way, shape, or form, compromise the integrity of the original film that we made.
Oh, that's so great to hear.
I would never do that. No way. I mean, too many great minds went into that. But I will say I've studied his life. I was approached about this a while ago, a long time. This has been brewing for a long time. And I will say, as you probably know more than I do, in fact, I would have to embark now on a whole journey to even prep that role. But from what I understand, his sojourn in Marion in the last 10 years of his life was horrific.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Horrible
horrific.
what they did. Horrible.
And I don't know even if it enters into the realm of human rights, which I believe it does, but I think what happened to him was very, very tragic.
Yeah,
And I think probably that is the dilemma of most of the penal system today.
Well, you know what people don't understand, having done 8 years in prison, visited my father for over 30 years. I've been either in prison or visiting prison my entire life. So I'm intimately familiar with the system. What people don't understand is that the punishment is going to prison. You're not supposed to be punished more in prison unless you're a danger to yourself and everybody else around you. And that's not an immense category in prison. The punishment is prison. Yeah. You know, losing your freedom, being away from your loved ones, you know, having to live under that thing. But too often in this country, they don't understand that they think they have to send people to prison to be persecuted more in prison. And that's not the way. You know, on 9/11, I spoke in Washington to the Senate staff and a number of senators. They asked me a lot about, you know, prison reformation. And I said, you know, if you senators really care about your constituents, when people go into prison, you're supposed to rehabilitate them so that when they come out, they don't wreak havoc on society again. You can't just put them in there and think they're going to be around all other people in the same category and they're going to educate themselves and all of a sudden come out upstanding citizens. Yeah. It's just not the right mentality. But our government thinks, oh, you got to be tough on crime, tough on crime, tough on crime. They don't understand that rehabilitation is an important process. And there is good in people. You know, just because people make mistakes, and I'm not talking about we're not talking about serial killers that are in a whole different category. Right. But they don't understand that when there is a goodness in people, and some of these people have grown up in terrible situations. You know, I'm in prison with young kids, 21, 22 years old, okay? You can write the same script for every single one of them. They grew up in a broken home, no father figure in the house. Mother trying to do their best, she's got her own problems, maybe she was a drug addict. The kid gets thrown into the community, he gets around the local drug dealer, he's trying to make a living, before you know it he's a gangbanger, and he ends up in prison or somewhere, God forbid, something worse. You know, I always say, what do you expect from that kid? You know, society caused that because of where we are today. I have 7 children, they grew up in a great situation, and I had a lot, you know, trouble with my son at one point in time. He was going in the other direction. He had the best of everything. When you bring these kids up like that, what do you expect from them? Yeah. You know? And that's why I say in prison, teach them something. Teach them a trade. Teach them how to get along with people. These are things that they never learned on the outside. Yeah. And, you know, we'd have a much better situation. But, you know, politicians don't buy into that. They don't get it. Yeah. They don't get it.
I also think, I mean, in a lot of ways, what really disturbs me is that our society has been so poisoned over and over again for so many years. You know, I was delving into I'm writing a project myself for a long time now, and I was reviewing some statistics a few weeks ago, and I read about something I find absolutely diabolical, which is the distribution of fentanyl. Mm-hmm. Well, you figure in 2019, there were 70,000 deaths from fentanyl. So figure, and just conservatively, let's say it's not 70,000 a year. Let's say it's, I don't know, let's say it's 50,000.
50,000.
Maybe if now it's 125,000 deaths since fentanyl has been in the distribution system. If you just take that figure, that is the equivalent of how many 9/11s goes into 125,000?
Yeah. We lost 3,000 in 9/11.
That's God knows, almost 6 9/11.
Yeah.
Or is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
No, 4 or 5.
More than that.
5
yeah.
9/11s.
Yeah.
So I'm saying it doesn't make the news.
Right.
We never hear about it. I had a friend of mine, his wife passed away. I couldn't find the obituary. I go through the obituaries in my county, 1 hour north of Manhattan. 22 years old, dead. 23 years old, dead. Overdose. 23 years old, 25. in my county. Kids are dying like flies, you know. And in a way, I find this, our society has, I once did an announcement for the Native Americans in Arizona and New Mexico. And I didn't realize, but the heroin pipeline began in the 40s, going through New Mexico and Arizona.
Right.
I did an announcement, which was in Spanish and English. If you're being abused in your home, please call this number. They had 1,800 calls within 2 hours.
Wow.
So there's something, you know, there's something happening in this society that it's suffered tremendous damage. And I think, like you say, you know, I do a lot of research when I take on these characters. I went into a prison once in California, and I'll tell you, I said there was a whole ward of these kids lying face down in bunk beds with their shirts off. 16 years old, face down. I'm thinking, what are these kids in that position for in this time of the day when they should be out playing basketball? And I said to the assistant to the warden, I said, why are they in that room like that? Well, if I let them out, they'll be raped.
Yeah.
I mean, it's staggering when you think of how many people have been afflicted through the poisons that have entered this society. Yeah. It's unbelievable. I mean, I was, you know, blessed in my life. I put my kids through private school. I did everything I possibly could for them. But, you know, I'm scared to death every day of my life because the influences around people today, it's not even that it's them. It's the influences that come around people. Yeah. You could walk down the street and in 1 second, your world turns upside down. You know? So I always say I've been blessed.
Well, I got to tell you, you have it's refreshing because you have a tremendous social conscience, Armand, and it's really, it's really a pleasure speaking to you, you know, above and beyond your tremendous talent and your great career. And
thank you very much. That
brings me to this. What do you got going on now?
Well,
I got to stop you. No. I got to tell you one thing. You know, they're doing this series All My Life. You know how it goes. I mean, I think it's going to get picked up. I don't see anybody playing Sonny Franzese but you. But I really mean that. But yeah, I mean that. I mean, you would be. That's all I could say.
What you must have seen in your lifetime must be just enough for 10 lifetimes.
Yeah. Well, true. And you would be.
Your father was some fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about. I mean, you know, even when I talk mob lore, I mean, he's like one of the real heavyweights.
He was
major heavyweights, and I heard right up until his dying day.
Yeah, you know, in a way, they were different, but Gotti's principle, Gotti was Cosa Nostra till he dies. That was it. Cosa Nostra till he dies. I have a respect for that because this was his principle. This is what he believed. That was it. My father was the same way. I mean, they could offer him anything in the world. He would not break his oath. That was it. He lived that way. He died that way. You know, I look at it, all right, Dad, I respect you, but, you know, our whole family was devastated and destroyed as a result of your involvement in this life. So there's two ways to look at it. But I respect him. But at any rate, I
want to ask you one question.
Sure.
Because I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. What you're doing, aside from the fact that it is Christian-based, what you're doing, but aside from that, what fascinates me about a character like Gotti, he wanted no redemption.
Right.
He did not care about redemption.
You're right.
And that's a frightening mindset to live in, you know. What was the point in your life? Was there a time or an episode or something in your life because, by the way, in some of the characters that I've played, including the one you mentioned when we began the conversation about Q&A, when I found out about that guy's life, I mean, there is a point where you say, I can do this no more. What was that point when you looked at your life and you said, I can no longer be a part of this construct. I can no longer accept this as a way of life for my life. That's heavy. It's a big, big decision. Was there an episode, was there a point Was there a moment that came to you?
There was a point, and it's unfortunate. I don't want to say this by saying something bad about my dad, because I don't feel that way, but there was a point when my dad betrayed me, and I was devastated over it internally. I was devastated because I said, wow, if this life can separate father and son, and I idolized my dad. And it got to me in a way, I never said anything about it. I never said anything to him. I just kept it inside for over a year. But it bothered me tremendously. I don't know if I would have ever renounced my oath as a result of that. But then what happens, I meet this young girl who's now my wife of 37 years. Wow. I fell in love with her, and I said, you know what? My mother spent 33 years without a husband. My sister dies young of an overdose of drugs. My brother's a drug addict, 25 years. My whole family was destroyed. Am I going to do the same? Am I going to be with this young girl and destroy another family? Well, I have to make a decision. And that's when I said, I can't do this anymore. I've seen too much destruction in this life, not only myself. Armand, I'll tell you, listen to this. I'm with a guy, another made guy. I'm driving him home one day. And we get to the front of his house, and I'm dropping him off. He says, don't leave, wait, Michael. It's okay, I knew this guy well. He goes up to the door, and he opens the door. And I see him like saying something in the house. Closes the door, gets back in the car. I says, Benny, what's the matter? He said, I can't go in the house. I said, why? He said, nobody's home. I said, Benny, this is your house, you live here. Him and his brother, his father, it was another made guy, his brother. His father was a made guy. His father was caught having an affair with another guy's wife or daughter, and the two sons were given a contract to kill him. That was 30 years earlier. He said, Michael, since that day, I can never be in my house alone because the ghost of my father haunts me. Wow. Intense. And that struck me like, wow. And I'm saying, is that what we do in this life? Kill our own families? Those two things really got to me, Armand. But again, my mother, my wife was a catalyst for me saying, I can't do this anymore. Powerful. I just can't. Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yeah, it was crazy stuff, but
those are the things that I believe it or not. Those are the things an actor looks for in the script. Mm. When does somebody become enlightened that this is just not worth it?
Yeah.
You know.
I said it's a bad life. You know, look, I always say this: it's an evil life. Because any life that's that destructive to families, and I've seen that, every family is the same. The families are destroyed. As any family, any lifestyle that does that to a family is not a good life. Now, I'm not calling the guys evil. I was one of them. I just happened to be very blessed. And there was a lot of good guys. A lot of good guys, you know. They did things, but they were still good people. Yeah. But it's a bad lifestyle. And I tell the same to these kids. Street life, the gang life, bad lives. It's a dead-end street. You're going to end up that way. Yeah. And fortunately, I have credibility, and you know, maybe I can get to some of these kids over the past 20 years, which I've been doing.
My parents, I believe, saved my life. I'll tell you a wild story. The night I was born, my mother was stricken with polio. She was paralyzed from the neck down for a long time.
The same night?
Same, my mother. Yeah.
Wow.
And I grew up with her in rehabilitation centers. I mean, she was physically trying to rebuild her body. And she only walked with braces and crutches for a short time. That virus, by the way, was devastating. 13 million people were afflicted with polio in 1949, the year I was born.
I had a cousin that was afflicted.
It was rampant. And the thing is that I kept watching, you know, victims of this virus and how prevalent it was. And it was wild. Around 1956, 57, I don't remember when it was, my mother had a student who was also a kid that she went to rehab center with, a 12-year-old kid who had polio. Mm-hmm. And she taught him piano. And around 56, 57, there's a book written about what happened. That kid, Michael Farmer, 12 years old, was stabbed to death in High Bridge, 2 blocks from my house, by 19 kids. So that was the beginning of the era of the gang war. The gang, it became West Side Story. I really believe my parents saved my life and my sister's life because they took all of us out.
was that event something that caused them to take you out?
They never spoke about it. It broke my mother's heart. I mean, we were devastated.
Right.
The kid was in the house all the time.
Right.
My point is that I really believe that they extracted us from the environs of what was happening to otherwise a brilliant enclave of Manhattan, one of the most brilliant neighborhoods.
I remember, yeah.
I mean, so many baseball players,
Yeah, no.
writers, Tiny Tim, Henry Kissinger.
Yeah,
you
all out of there.
name it, they came out of that neighborhood. But I'm saying I really believe my parents saved my life from that episode.
Yeah.
And I wish kids could understand what happens to people's lives. The fragility of this journey is but wild. It's been awesome talking to you because I really mean this. I'm going to say it again. What you've done for America is something to stand up for. It's really, really beautiful.
Well, thank you, Armand. And I appreciate that. And, I have to say this. You've been one of my favorite guys, not knowing you for all of these years.
Thank you.
But now knowing you for these past several months, I mean, you're right there. You're at the top of the list. I mean, it's been an honor and a privilege and a pleasure. And I hope we continue to...
Well, with the help of God, we'll do something good.
Sounds good.
God bless
All right.
you, man.
God bless.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this sit down as much as I did. And I just am thrilled with the relationship and the friendship that I've struck up with Armand. He's got a lot of things going on, by the way. He's by no means retired, so keep an eye out for him. Like I said, never know who's going to pop up in my television series, but hopefully it'll be Armand. So that's about it. How do I always leave you? You know it, same way, not going to change. Be safe, be healthy. God bless you all. Yes, I'll see you next time.